We're combining all the best old school wisdom with all the top new school methods to bring you the optimal way to coach and play the great game of baseball. This is the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass with Coach Bo.
Welcome, everybody. Coach Bo here. Thank you for being here. Let's get into it. In this episode 67 of our weekly 80-20 Baseball podcast, our 80-20 Baseball Masterclass, we are going to discuss, well, let me say this. I'm fired up that we're discussing baseball, and it's baseball season. The weather's warming up. Things are opening up. This is a great time of year. I'm just fired up. I'm seeing baseball highlights, college baseball highlights. I'm seeing highlights from some high school games. This is awesome. I see the field starting to get full of baseball and other sports, so I'm excited. Some of you guys are in states that have some crazy leadership, so maybe you're still all locked up like a North Korean prison camp. But all semi-serious jokes aside, this is awesome time of year. Baseball is getting going all over the place, and in this week's episode, we are going to discuss arm care. We will discuss strategies that will help mitigate, help reduce arm injuries for our players. We can eliminate injuries, and that should never be our expectation. It should be our goal, but it shouldn't be our expectation. And with that said, we will discuss strategies, specific things that we can do as coaches to mitigate arm injuries and promote arm care. In part 2 of this episode, we are going to discuss a specific way, and we're going to dive into it a little bit, not deep. Again, I try to keep this podcast right at 30 minutes. I think that's a good time slot for most people to fit in weekly. We are going to discuss in part 2 how to speed up your practice without jeopardizing the quality of the practice, how to speed it up, especially some of that dead time, without reducing the quality of your practice. And I'm going to give you some pointers on that to help you out there. We're also going to slide in a wonderful quote, a wonderful learning point, a message, some wisdom into, or in between, I should say, part 1 and part 2 of today's episode. All right, for arm care, part 1 here, arm care. Most players are not going to be forthright about how their arm feels. Some over-exaggerate their arm and they think every little pinch or pain is arm-threatening and life-threatening. But most players are not going to be forthright. They're not going to be coming up and saying something to you as the coach about their arm not feeling well. I think it's important as coaches to just have sure, we want to have an open dialogue with our players, but even at 11U, 10U, 13, high school, they're not always sure what's going on with their arm. They're not doctors. So when they give you information, they can maybe say on a scale of 1 to 10 how their arm feels to them, which can be very useful information and feedback, but it's also not a doctor's assessment or professional opinion from somebody in the physical therapy world or an athletic trainer, etc. But it is something that we do want to maybe ask from time to time how the arm is feeling to get some feedback from the players. Some players can give accurate feedback, very accurate feedback, and some players, they're a little bit one side or the other. They'll tell you their arm feels great, and it's, it is somewhat sore, or some players will tell you their arm is in severe pain, but to them, a 9 is what the average player is thinking is like a 3. So you don't know, but it is good to ask. So I know a lot of you coaches, a little old school, probably a little bit more of an old school time when you played Little League in the 90s, late 80s like myself, 90s, and even in the early 2000s, some of you. Most of you are probably in the 90s and late 80s, and you're just coming off that. We were still kind of in that old school mindset of just, you don't say anything. I mean, my arm hurt all the time when I played, probably because I'm super tall and the growth and things like that, and playing in multiple sports and never giving it a rest and being asked to pitch a lot of pitches. There was no pitch counts mandated by the leagues. You had innings, but not pitch counts. And I just never said anything. I never said anything ever about my arm until I just couldn't pitch anymore my junior year of college. And eventually I went in, and the doctor, or it was the physician's assistant that was working at the time at the on-campus medical clinic at Long Beach State, looked at the x-rays and said, your elbow is like broken in a bunch of pieces. And I said, well, what does that mean? They said, well, it just looks like your elbow joint is all a bunch of pieces. And so in their defense, they weren't sports injury experts. So I went and saw the Angels and Dodgers team physician. In fact, the physician that most major leaguers would come and get a second opinion from, the late, great Dr. Yoakum. And Dr. Yoakum looked at my arm through the x-ray and he said, hey, this is pretty bad. Why haven't you said anything? I said, well, there's just not, I'm just like a lot of you listening. You just keep going. You just grind and you don't worry about it. You don't think about it. You just keep going, take some ibuprofen and keep on keeping on. And he sure sure as heck aren't going to say anything to the coach. Well, after the surgery that I had my junior year of college, I went and saw Dr. Yoakum over at the Curlin and Job Clinic. Job is Frank Job. He's the one who originally did the Tommy John surgery, the original Tommy John surgery. And I was over at the Curlin and Job Clinic over there off the 405 freeway. And Dr. Yoakum walks in and he's really succinct. Anybody who's ever met Dr. Yoakum and has heard stories, you can almost predict exactly what he was going to do, or more specifically, what he was going to say. And Dr. Yoakum looked at me and says, I've never seen an elbow like this before. He goes, he goes, your ligaments are great. So, but he goes, I deal with a lot of ligaments, the UCL, the Tommy John ligaments, the UCL injury. I get ligament injury. He goes, but I've never seen an elbow this messed up. So this was the follow-up appointment with him post-surgery. So he did a surgery, did an arthro surgery on it, cleaned it out. And he said, I stopped counting the pieces of bone from your elbow at 20. He goes, I stopped counting at 20. He goes, I've never seen anything close to this. And the reason I'm sharing this with you, my elbow was disintegrated over the years. I played basketball, football, baseball, you name it, I played it. I mean, I was out. I never sat down. I was always playing sports, and I pitched a lot, and I played football, and I think getting hit on the elbow in football a couple times, I got smacked by a face mask. Believe it or not, it was by a guy who played in the major leagues, but this was in high school. He hit me, Ryan Garco, and Ryan Garco put his face mask, and Ryan Garco, I played with the Indians. He also played in the major leagues with another team. I'm drawing a blank, but Ryan Garco put his face mask on my elbow, pretty much a full speed collision, but he put his face mask on my elbow. I think that messed it up, and over the years, just being tall, kind of growth plate issues, and I never said anything about it. So you're going to have players, and in many cases, you will have a lot of players. I don't know. It seems like there's more and more as we move forward with the generations, it seems like there's more and more players that want to complain about their arms, but a lot of times it's warranted, and a lot of times their arm is sore. But I think if kind of to sum up this whole kind of why I shared that story about what happened with me and my arm over the years and going to Dr. Yoakum, it's important to understand that not every player is going to tell you, and a lot of players aren't going to tell you when their arms are sore or when they're not feeling good. So you have to think that they may be sore, they may not be sore, but I think the idea is to ask them where they are on a scale of 1 to 10, or maybe even 1 to 5. Ask on a scale of 1 to 5, and they say on a scale of 1 to 5, where you at? What I think is the best way to use this measurement, this feedback, this subjective feedback, is to ask the players early on in the year, and then you establish a baseline for where they're at, or you at least establish a baseline for their interpretation of arm pain and not. This is not a precise way of doing it, but it's a very good way to get an understanding. Like if you got somebody who's coming out right away and always saying 7, 8, 9, they might very well be somebody who assesses their pain at a higher level than somebody else, but it gives you a baseline. So if you have somebody who's always like, no pain, or I'm a 2, I'm a 1, and then they come to you one day and say they're an 8, you can say, well, that's a pretty big jump. This player's usually telling me it's a 2 or a none or a 1 or 3, and now they're telling me their arm is feeling like a 9 on the pain scale. It's something to kind of keep in mind. So you have a kind of a baseline for each player in terms of their pain assessment. Now, you may have a player at the beginning of the year with an arm injury already. So they're saying, coach, my arm is like 7 or an 8 or a 9. Those I would almost immediately have go see a doctor early on if they're. And another way to look at arm pain when it comes to players and arm injuries is to watch them. Watch them. Do not watch them after they walk a batter or give up a home run. Don't watch them after in the middle of an outing when they're struggling and they start shrugging their arm and kind of like cringing. That's the most opportune time or the best time for a pitcher to kind of make sure that the coach thinks that, I'm struggling right now because my arm, it's hurting, right? It's kind of a cop-out move where you're trying to deflect the responsibility and the poor outing to your arm pain. Doesn't mean their arm isn't hurting them, but don't assess a pitcher in the middle of a game, especially if they're not doing well. When they're really looking like they're in pain, they're moving, they're holding their arm, they're rubbing their arm. Watch what they do in the dugout, or watch what they do when they think nobody's looking. If they are holding their arm or they're warming up and they don't think you can see them, maybe you got your sunglasses on and they think you're looking over towards this group of players, but you're watching them out of the corner of your eye and you see they're showing signs of arm pain. That might be something to keep an eye on and definitely ask them about. All right, definitely ask them about it. And at the end of the day, you can get in and see a professional. Get in and see a sports doctor. Get in and see somebody who's familiar with throwing arm injuries. At a minimum, somebody who deals with like tennis elbow. So now I laid some groundwork there for us as coaches to look to assess pain, because we don't have fMRI machines out there. We can't run them through body scans out there. We are not, all of us are not physiotherapists. We don't have assessment tools that we can do out there, but there are some things you can do to assess players, to evaluate, to gauge how your players' arms feel and how they're doing. Now, here are 4 strategies strategies to help all of your players, and especially your pitchers, all of your pitchers. And at the lower levels, more of the players are going to be pitchers, and it's going to be spread out. The innings are spread out more. And as players get older, I understand that fewer and fewer of the players pitch, and they start specializing in an outfield, infield, catcher, and you have pitcher onlys. You really don't have pitcher. You don't see pitcher onlys at a 10U game, or even in Little League. You don't see like a pitcher. What position? I'm a PO. I'm a pitcher only. Like that is super common at the college level, somewhat common at the high school level, and crazy common, almost 100% certainty to have that at the professional level. Although they are going with a lot more of these two-way players as of recent, which is fun to watch, by the way. I like watching that. Speaking of which, on a side note, Michael Lorenzen, he's a Cal State Fullerton guy. Michael Lorenzen is I believe he's with the Reds still. He's been with the Reds, and he's a fun player to watch. But one thing I think you can all learn from it, I definitely think you should take the time to go on YouTube, type in Michael Lorenzen, and you'll see he has a video on there, like a 7 or 8 minute video that is kind of a snippet of his workout routine. I definitely think it's worth the time to go check out his workout routine, because I think his workout routine, not only is he really ripped, like he's very strong and he looks the part, but I really like how he diversifies his strength and conditioning program. He thinks a little bit outside of the box, but you can tell with each one of his exercises that he's doing, even some of those exercises that maybe some of you have never seen a player do before, I still think that when I'm watching it, I believe he's got a specific reason why he's doing that exercise to help him get better come game time. So go watch Michael Lorenzen, a two-way player. Go watch, there's a good one on YouTube of him working out, and he's just a good guy, so he's a good guy to kind of follow along anyways. All right, so back to this 4 specific strategies to help you, so you can help your players keep their arm care in a better place. Number 1, spread out the pitches. Spread out the pitches. If you have certain amount of pitches or certain amount of innings that you want to pitch a pitcher, spread them out. Spread them out. What do I mean by that? Don't chunk it all, maybe 5 innings, 1 game. I recommend you spread it out a little bit. Again, this is all dependent on the player and their arm health. This is not a blanket policy that I would use, but I do think spreading out the pitches is a better way to go. I think that if you can spread it out and you don't bunch and batch, we talk about batching, right? We've talked about batching, and as coaches, I think batching practice, batching our training, batching everything in our lives should be at the forefront of kind of a strategy for us, or forefront of how we kind of go about things. But when it comes to pitching, I don't like the bulk and batching it all on one day or 1 day a week. If you can spread it out a little bit, I think that is probably a better way to go. I think the research has shown that that's probably a better way. So spread out the pitches. And the main reason why I recommend that you spread out the pitches is not because the arm durability specifically, and arm durability definitely comes into play, but it really is more about the leg strength and the leg muscle endurance, the ability for the players, youth players, to endure a lot of pitches before their legs start to fatigue and give out a little bit more. They're not just going to give out where they fall over, but they start to sacrifice their posture and their stability from their bottom half and through their core, and thus they put a lot more strain on the arms. And that happens with higher volumes. So you can long toss till the cows come home, and this is something that gets pushed a lot. You can long toss till the cows come home. But if you're not building up muscle endurance, muscle durability, muscle strength in the lower half, especially the leg, especially that front lead leg, you don't want to be asymmetrical with your muscle strength, but definitely that landing leg, that post leg, that's a massive deal for pitcher strength, and also being able to pitch into a game longer, have a higher pitch count without sacrificing the arm and putting a lot more strain on the arm. A strong base obviously inherently reduces the strain on the arm insofar as the mechanics and the delivery is pretty well put together. And so to wrap up part 1, it's something to keep in mind: the leg strength, the muscle endurance in the legs, the muscle endurance in the hips, especially in the thighs and the quads. That is a big part of a pitcher being able to pitch a lot more pitches and keeping their arm strong late into the game. Moving to the next tip. Second, the big thing is rest. Making sure that the players get adequate rest, especially the day after they throw or a couple days after. That's really important. So I think making sure that if they do have a pitch count that gets up there a little bit, that they have adequate rest on their arm. Rest does not mean not moving the arm. Rest does not mean laying on the couch. I didn't say bed rest. It's just rest from pitching so that they have some rest. So if they throw a bullpen, if they pitch on a Saturday, I don't recommend, say they pitch 4 innings on a Saturday, on your typical player, I wouldn't recommend setting up a bullpen on Monday. And I remembered for years and years, I did individual pitching lessons, private lessons for years, and even group lessons. But I would have players come to me, or their parents would call me and say, hey, I want to get Johnny a lesson. And I would ask him, so, well, when's the last time he pitched? And they would say, oh, he pitched yesterday. And I said, well, when did you want to schedule the lesson? They'd say, can we do it tomorrow? And I'd say, well, how many innings did they pitch? And they'd say, well, he threw 5 innings, or he threw 6 innings. And I said, well, let's not have him do it, because when I wanted them to come train with me, I wanted to get the pitch count up a little so we could work through things. We didn't just only throw pitches. We worked on a lot of different things, but I wanted to have a pitch count, a pitch volume that was not going to be 15 pitches, 10 pitches, something like a short side bullpen, as it's known in the baseball community, a short side. I wanted to have a little bit of an extended bullpen to work through some of the bad habits, etc. And they would say, well, how about, or I'd even have some dads call me and say, hey, you had a bad outing today. Can I get him in to see you tomorrow? And I would say, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now, I told them they could come in and work with me on strength training and recovery, which I think is vital. And we're going to get to that on the next recommendation here. But I would definitely recommend that they get adequate rest in terms of pitching again, rest in terms of throwing at a high volume again, get some rest in there. Every player is going to vary. So I can't just say it's just 2 days or 3 days or 1 day or 4 days. It's going to vary, but I would definitely spread it out. Rest. I think 2 days is pretty good number, 2 full days. So if they threw on a Saturday, they would rest. They wouldn't throw a bullpen or any kind of heavy volume throwing, definitely no pitching for a couple days, typically until like Tuesday. I think that's a good one. I think 3 days rest is good if the volume's up, 4 days rest if they throw a high volume. One way to work this in is have your pitchers, and I talked with Coach Chase via Twitter. Coach Chase out there in Houston, Texas, big shout out to Coach Chase, reached out and he asked me a great question about how to kind of stack the pitching. And we're going to talk about that next week with some more depth. We're going to talk about stacking the pitching, how to optimize your pitching staff. But I will say this right now, I would not stack youth pitching with one pitcher pitching of all their week's pitches and innings on one day. I would spread it out. And we'll talk about some strategies of stacking your pitching staff, how to play it out. It's going to vary for each team. Depends on how your guys are mentally prepared, how your pitchers are in terms of mental strength. Is this a guy who can finish a game? Is this a player that should start a game? We'll also discuss certain pitchers not doing very well unless they have adequate prep time. So instead of having them run down there between innings from shortstop, run over to the bullpen, get 7 pitches, 12 pitches in, and run back out and pitch the next inning. Maybe that pitcher who's a good pitcher but struggles to get ready quick and doesn't dial in all his pitches very fast. Or maybe it's a pitcher with 4 pitches that needs to get those dialed in. Maybe that's the guy. Maybe that's the player that you start. Maybe that's the player that you pitch at the beginning of the game, knowing that they have adequate time or enough time to get prepared before the game. So we'll talk about some of those strategies in next week's episode. And so let's get to the third recommendation and the fourth recommendation. Recommendation number 3, to help mitigate arm injuries and to help promote better arm care. Number 3, post-game stretching. Post-game stretching, post-game recovery. I'm a big fan of post-game stretching. I'm a big fan of the day after pitching stretching. All my pitchers have a routine that they go through. And over the years, they've had this for many years now. The pitchers that I work with have a post-game stretching routine. It can be done with the fence. The 2 things that you would need are a fence, and the second thing, which you don't need but would help, is elastic tubing, the J-band. So you have a fence and you have a band, elastic tubing, a J-band. Those really work well. And those pitchers that pitch in the game should have a stretching routine that they go through, a minimum of 3 minutes. 5 is really good. If it's an older pitcher, somebody with a little more muscle development, 10 minutes, they should have a nice stretching routine that they do, that's structured, that's scripted, that they do and can do as a staff, as a team, or I should say as a pitching staff. All the pitchers that pitch in the game can do this afterwards. It's so easy just to leave the field, pack up and go, get on to the next thing. Kids are eager to maybe go home, especially after a long game, especially after a game that didn't have a lot of excitement, or especially after a long day, maybe a midweek game, a weekday game. But I think it's essential that you do post-game stretching. You're getting the lats, you're really moving the shoulder through, and it's hard to explain it on a podcast. And I have a video of this on Vimeo. I believe it's on Vimeo. If not, I'm going to put together another one here and have a post-game stretch routine, or to show you a post-game stretch routine for pitchers. You really want to work the shoulder through a wide range of motion insofar as that you're not hurting it, but you want to run it through, especially those lats, the latissimus dorsi, the lats. You really want to go up over the head. With your, say, a fence stretch, you just grab the fence, both hands up above you together, and then you just sink down into a squat position, and that should really work the lats and stretch out the shoulders and really put that arm through a nice fluid range of motion, where what happens is after you pitch, the arms will typically, and this doesn't happen as much for young pitchers, but as you get older, even the 12s, 13s, your arm is going to develop a little bit of stiffness, a little bit of soreness. So you're really trying to stretch those muscles out after they're done pitching. You shouldn't do a lot of stretching, and my recommendation, you shouldn't do a lot of stretching before pitching and before the game. It should be dynamic. You should definitely work through a wide range of motion, but it should be movement, whether that's slow building up to fast. Really, the static stretching is so valuable for pitching after the game. Static stretching after pitchers pitch, to me, is such a good thing. Now, I know there's a lot of different routines that pitchers do and that are kind of sold out there in terms of post-game routines for arm care. You can do a lot of those. I don't think you should really focus on doing a bunch of plyo ball work at the end or a bunch of stuff that utilizes more of the muscles in terms of muscle strength and really throw-in type of movements. Really, what I think is work that arm through a long range of motion, a wide range of motion, a greater range of motion with stretches. So post-game stretches. And number 4, nutrition. You want to help the pitcher, let them know that they need to make sure that they're getting a good amount of vitamins, that they're having a balanced diet. So I know we think about diet like as in, weight and this, that, and the other. And we as adults think about nutrition and diet and losing weight or gaining weight, typically losing weight. But athletic performance, muscle, cellular development, all of that, ligament development, all of that, the strength, the recovery, nutrition can be very beneficial. Well, we know it's beneficial, but it can be extremely beneficial for athletic recovery. It doesn't have to be protein based, but definitely nutrition, water, recovery. Definitely want to get those vitamins, those minerals, water, a little bit of protein wouldn't be bad. I don't think you need to get crazy with this, but I definitely think putting a little focus into post-game nutrition would be a very beneficial part of recovery for all athletes. So this goes across the board for all athletes. Even if it was something like a big glass of water when you get home, say like 3 cups of water, a banana, and 15 almonds, assuming you're not allergic to nuts. And when I say nuts, I'm not referring to those crazy parents in the stands that are always yelling at everything. But that simple recipe right there can get your muscles some of the things that it needs. Water's big, almonds are loaded with protein, bananas are good for the muscles post-athletic competition. And you could get even more acute with all this, but I'm just trying to give a generic plan. Bananas, 1 banana, 2 or 3, I think like 3 cups of water, so like 25 ounces, give or take. I know 24 is a 3 cups, but like 25 ounces, a banana, and like 15, 20 almonds. If you want to get those almonds, put them in some yogurt or something so the kids eat them. But I think that's a good way to have some post-game nutrition for all players, not just pitchers. So spread out the pitches, rest afterwards, make sure you get some rest, a good schedule, and we'll talk about this next week a little more. And I hope you tune in next week because we're going to talk about how to stack your pitchers and optimize your pitchers in terms of when to pitch them, how to structure, and it's going to vary, but we're going to have some strategies that I think can work for a lot of teams, a lot of coaches to best optimize using when they use their best guy or this person or that person or a lefty versus or this or a pitcher that fares better at the beginning of the game versus the end of the game or in certain situations. So spread out the pitches, make sure they get rest. Post-game stretching could be the biggest thing when it comes to what you can do at one time. Spread out the pitches over the course of the season. And nutrition is something that every player should start taking a little more serious. Maybe they don't have this full-on like The Rock, nutrition program. Okay, they shouldn't, not at their age. And even the high school level, they shouldn't. But definitely some kind of nutrition structure, some kind of plan, whether it's, like I said, a banana, 15 almonds, and 3 cups of water at the end of every game. That's just what they do. They take it down, boom. It's not a big deal. They just get it done and move on. That can add up. So those 4 strategies, there are some other strategies, but I think those 4 strategies are great for arm care. So Coach Cosimo out there on the panhandle of Florida reached out and asked me, hey, Coach Bo, maybe you could talk about arm care and how to best optimize the arm care, or at least do some things to help with the arm care. Those strategies right there should work for the most part across the board. And there are individual strategies that work with individual pitchers based off of their individual needs. But those, I think, cover a big chunk of the strategies that you as a coach can do, because at the end of the day, when it comes to real arm injuries and arm care, that's probably going to be left to the doctors and the professionals. But out there on the field, from a parent standpoint, those are good starting points. I got a quote here. Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Famous book. Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That book, world famous. His quote, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Seek first to understand and then be understood. Now, this goes across everything in life, right? But out there on the field, players will trust coaches and they'll give you more buy-in. You'll get better player buy-in when they know that you've listened, when they know that you care. And one way of showing that you care, one of the best ways to show that you care as a coach. In turn, you're going to get buy-in and they're going to be open-minded and their ears are going to be open much better or much wider. They're going to listen much more closely and then apply what you're telling them if you show them that you're trying to understand them and where they're coming from. If you try to get to know them, understand them, you listen to them, then they will reciprocate. You can say, well, they just need to listen anyways. They just need to listen to me. I'm the coach. I'm the adult. They're the kid. I get it. Hey, that's how I was. All right. I didn't need a coach to ask me this, that, and the other. I didn't need a coach to reach out. I just listened to the coach. I did what the coach said, but that's not how all the kids are. That's just not how they are. And long-term, the coaches that I listened to long-term, the best, the ones that I played for more than just a quick season and for 3-4 seasons or long-term, those coaches that showed that they cared about me and they wanted to understand me as an individual first, those were definitely the coaches I would listen to more so than a transactional coach, which there are too many of those out there. Be a transformational coach, not a transactional coach. And you first do that by seeking to understand the player. They should feel that you understand them. Doesn't mean you agree with them. It doesn't even mean you got to tell them they're right, but just go out there, ask them questions. Even if it's just ask them how their day's going. I heard a coach the other day say something about at the beginning of the practice, they take the throwing routine time, the throwing program time to work around and try to talk to not all the players. That's not always realistic, but to try to reach out to 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 of the players and ask them how they're doing, how their day's going. And I think the more specific you can be with their questions, especially or with your questions, and better yet, even better follow-up questions to their answers. I think the follow-up questions are worth like 5x what the original question is when it comes to the players seeing that you care about them. I think the initial question comes across as is that a token? Is that a formality? But when you ask a second or third question that dives in a little deeper, that can go a long ways. Players are going to know that you're seeking to understand them. And then just naturally, they're going to reciprocate more often than not. And then they're going to want to understand you. So Stephen Covey, with that well-known part of his book, one of his 7 habits in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, seek first to understand your players, then to be understood by your players. So take that and see how you can work that into your practice, how you can work that into your team environment. Part 2, what's the best way to go from drill to drill? What's the best way to go from drill to drill? We are always trying to make practice faster without jeopardizing the quality of the practice. You're always, as a coach, should be looking at it to go for 2 reasons. 1, it makes the practice much more enjoyable, moving along, keeping it moving. That makes it more enjoyable for the coaches and definitely for the players. But more importantly, you get more quality reps because you're wasting less time. The best way to go from drill to drill, there's 2 strategies here that I really like to use. There's probably more. Again, this podcast is not about having all the answers. I'm just trying to share with you these answers that I know work, and I know work across the board for most coaches, and they work really well. First strategy, batch your drills as best as possible. So your pitching, catching, your outfield, your infield drills, your defensive drills, batch those with other defensive drills, batch your base running drills with your other base running drills, batch your hitting all together. And also, with that said, this is a good strategy. This is something I think a lot of you are going to shake your head like right away, go, yeah, I get this. And a lot of you probably aren't using this. And this is something that I think, and I found to work really well. It's a little thing, but it adds up over the course of a long season or a course of a full season, especially when you have 1 practice, 2 practices a week. It adds up definitely for anybody who has more, like high schools and college. Don't have your players put their gear in the dugout where they have to go in. Some of those dugouts are so tight and cramped and the kids are walking and waiting and moving around each other. Have them put their gear right in front of the dugout, outside the fence. So it wouldn't be in the dugout, but on the outside part of the fence. Have them line up their bags along the fence, their gear along the fence. Have them keep all their gear together for each player together and have them put it outside. This eliminates players needing to go into the dugout and having to work around each other, like I said, and it just gets a little cramped. Some of these dugouts, you got to go down some steps. You got to go through 1 door, 2 door. You're losing time there. If you have all the stuff lined up and it may be stretched out for 60 feet or 70 feet, that's okay. You should have a lot of fence line. Have them put it out in front on the fence, their stuff, so they can just run over and grab it without having to go in the dugout or go down the steps or sometimes these dugouts have one door, one gate door, and it's just a pain in the butt to get everybody in and out quick and efficiently. You may go, well, coach, that's only going to save me 1 minute, 2 minutes. Well, if you have 20 practices, you just gained yourself an hour and maybe 2 hours, depending on how many times you went in the dugout and came back out of the dugout during a practice. Typically, you send your team in or send them over to get their bat, their helmet, their glove, this, that, and the other, or some balls or something. They forgot something. They need to get some water. Another thing is just the water break. They need to get something to drink. Have the gear outside of the dugout. Have the gear outside of the dugout, and then they can get to it much faster. You can't do this during the game, of course, but that's okay. You don't need it during the game. You're trying to make practices more efficient. Secondly, time all transitions. Time them. You got a stopwatch. Maybe you got a watch. Maybe you all have stopwatches on your phone. Maybe even bring out your own stopwatch, which is pretty cool. I think having a stopwatch on your watch or having your own stopwatch is really, really, really a good idea for a baseball coach. We talked about it last week, timing those throwing drills, using a stopwatch. Sometimes, we think of competitions as competitions versus one group versus another or one player versus another. And I think the best way to start your competitions, the number one way to try to get the competitions embedded into practice is them working as a team or them going against something that's not their teammate, like the clock. Them working against the clock is a good one. This can't always be done. And I think competitions versus their teammates is great. And they need to learn how to deal with failure and learn how to compete. But sometimes competing against the clock, sometimes as a team competing to get a goal, those should be the first competitions we strive to embed. Can't always do it and doesn't fit with every drill. But if you got your stopwatch, you got your stopwatch on your phone, you got your own watch, like an Apple Watch or something like that, or a Fitbit, time every transition. Time the transition. And you would be surprised, they need less time than you think they need. And some of you are already doing this, so keep doing that. Time everything. Time how fast they pick up baseballs. Time it all. I have saved so many hours of practice time over the years by just timing how fast we pick up baseballs. And you'd be surprised, typically, like baseballs around the infield or baseballs out in the outfield, they can be picked up definitely in less than 60 seconds by all the players working together. Definitely in less than 60 seconds. And very specific, I tell them, I need that bucket filled, I need every baseball picked up, and I need that bucket over at home plate. I need that bucket at first base. I need that bucket over here. And those things, those little things, timing and giving just a finite amount of time to get the transition done when it terms of especially picking up the equipment. All right, I need every glove, I need every bat, I need every helmet over in your bags, ready to go, or at the end of practice. I need all of you. Have all your gear, your bags packed, and we are going to have our post-practice discussion in 90 seconds. We are going to meet up down the line in 90 seconds or 2 minutes. You'd be surprised how fast these kids can move when they need to. And it teaches them to be organized and cut out the chit-chat and all that kind of downtime. And I'll tell you this may surprise a lot of you. It may surprise none of you. I don't know, but it definitely surprised me when I did it. Kids like that. They like to move fast. They like to kind of move fast and get to the next thing. They want to move fast. Baseball, the number one thing that's going to kill baseball is not the game of baseball. It's not the actual scoring and hitting home runs and striking people out and making diving catches. It's going to be that these games drag on. The sport just gets stale. Practices get stale. The games can get stale. And you can say, well, these kids need to learn how to just sit there and, hang out and they need to be patient. They need to, good luck, right? Good luck. That would be like saying, well, you know what? These kids just need to get used to using pagers. They need to learn how to use a pager. They need to learn how to use a payphone. They need to put the quarter in. They need to call that pager and they need to type the number in and wait for that person to call them back when they get their page on their beeper. I mean, we can have that, mindset, but it's not going to get you anywhere. All right. Kids want to move fast. They want to, and why wouldn't you want to move fast too as a coach? I did it. I wanted to move fast because I wanted to get way more reps in than the other teams. I wanted to get way more quality reps in, and I just didn't want downtime. I'd rather practice an hour and a half and get the same amount of reps in instead of 2 hours. Usually I wouldn't even cut practice down. I'd go 2 hours and just get another 30%, 40%. In some cases, I was getting 50% more reps than other teams. And some teams I would watch, even college teams. I watched the Division I college team do a bunt drill, and they bunted. Each player got one bunt every 3 minutes. One bunt every 3 minutes. That's crazy. That to me, these guys are college players, scholarship, looking to go pro. Even they were getting bored out there. So imagine a 12-year-old who's on the fence between playing baseball and video games and doing other sports. So, all right. So have all the gear out in front of the dugout during practice. Have it lined up against the fence as tight as it can be, not out 3-4 feet, but right up against the fence. You can have them before they even start practice. Have them get all their gear and put it on top of the bag. Place the bat on top, the glove on top, the helmet on top, the batting gloves on top. So when practice starts at 5 o'clock, everything's on top and it's ready to go. They can run over there. Have them take the water out and set it next to their bag. These little things like that. You just make it a system, a structure. You shouldn't have to remind them. Well, you shouldn't have to remind them, but it's okay. You're going to. They're kids. We all need reminders from time to time. Even adults at the workplace or in our own business, we need reminders from time to time on certain things. So with that said, time all transitions. Have the equipment easily accessible and ready to go. Time picking up equipment like baseballs. Pick up the baseball. That's a big one in baseball. Picking up the baseballs fast. Time them. If they don't get it done in 75 seconds, if they don't get it done in 60 seconds, bear crawl. And some drills can be picked up in 45 seconds. I would recommend this. I would always start with a little more time on your expectation on the stopwatch at the beginning, and then you can always reduce it. All right. You don't want to just say, all right, you got 17 seconds to pick up 100 baseballs. Now you either going to get called out because you bluffed them and didn't follow through, and you would follow through. And my recommendation is a bear crawl. Bear crawl, 90 feet and back, 60 feet and back for youth, 90 feet and back or center field and back from, say, the back edge of the infield grass behind second base. They bear crawl out to the center field fence or to the warning track and then jog back, something like that. I definitely would follow through. So that would be your consequence for not picking up those balls. But I would start something you think might take a little time, 90 seconds. You can drop it down to 75 seconds. You can drop it down to 60 seconds. You can always start at 60 seconds or 75 and drop it down to 45. I would drop it down after they show that they can do it. But nothing should take more than 2 minutes when it comes to cleaning up, picking up. Another thing is time your water breaks. Give them enough time to get some water, but be very clear. You got a 2-minute water break. That should be plenty enough time for you to go over and get 1 or 2 cups of water in your system. So I think there's definitely some good strategies here. I know they work really well, and they're going to speed up your practice. Kids are going to like it. You think they're not because you think they're just going to want to sit around. They don't want to stand around and just kill time. They don't. They want to be out there. They want to play baseball. Sure, you might get somebody who's a kid that's not feeling good and he's just, a little lethargic that day. But overall, kids want to move fast. They like it. Trust me, I've done this with hundreds of players, tons of different teams, and they all have the same response. Next week, we are going to get into how to stack your pitching staff. And I got another really good recommendation for you next week on episode 68 of our weekly podcast here, the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass, the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter. And when I say follow me, basically you can follow me as a coach. I'm not posting anything about this, that, and the other and beautiful sunsets and family photos. It's coaching strategies. I throw out coaching strategies, mindset strategies for coaches, 80-20_baseball. 8020_baseball. That's on Twitter. Nothing but baseball stuff. Every once in a while, I'll retweet something from a mental health coach. It's derived from outside of baseball, but it's a strategy that can be used as a coach, definitely with our players. Another great way to get a hold of me is at coachbo@8020baseball.com, coachbo@8020baseball.com. Until next episode, everybody, take care of yourselves, take care of that health, take care of your families. Go out there with this information and make the baseball community a better place. Make it a better place. Make it a more fun place. Until next time, this has been Coach Bo. Take care.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. Take it to the field.